Okay guys, I am here today to do a review of Tessa Bailey's new book, Secretly Yours. Now, when I first saw this book, I was really on the fence about requesting it from Edelweiss, where I did eventually get a free advanced review copy, so thanks to them and the publisher for taking a chance on me. I really liked Tessa Bailey's Hot and Hammered series. In fact, my series review of those books is one of the top videos on my channel as of this filming. But when she went into that new series about It Happened One Summer, whatever the heck that one was, I read the first 20 pages and I really could not stand the narrator, and so I said, no, I'm not gonna read these. And so I didn't. And for all I know, those get better, but at the time, they just weren't where I was at, so I didn't read them. So when this one came out, it's the start of a new series, and it sounded like an interesting premise, and I said, well, right now, Tessa Bailey is really kind of 50-50 for me, so why don't I take a chance on this new series? And oh my goodness, is this book a thing? Honestly, I'm just confused. If this was my first ever Tessa Bailey book, maybe I would have different thoughts, but I've read good books by her. I know she's written multiple books. I don't understand what's going on here. So we're gonna talk about that. So if you're not familiar with the plot of Secretly Yours, it's the start of a new series called Vine Mess, set out in California, and it's called A Vine Mess because the family kind of at the center of it, the Voss family, own a winery. Vines, wine, you get it. So the story is set in Napa, and it is a story of Julian Voss, who is the son of the Voss family. He has a sister, there's two of them, and Haley Welch, who is a gardener in this town where the Voss family winery is. Haley and Julian went to school together when he was a senior, she was a freshman, and they shared one very awkward almost kiss. And basically from that moment, Haley has been absolutely obsessed with Julian Voss. She moved away for a while, and then he moved away, and now due to a confluence of events, they are both back in the Napa Valley town where they both grew up, and they are being tossed together in an awkward situation once again. So when I say Haley is obsessed with Julian, I mean obsessed. And so when Haley hears that Julian is coming back from town, she basically calls up his mom and she's like, hey, your guest cottage, where your son happens to be staying, I really think it needs some landscaping, and the Voss winery has fallen on kind of hard times, and Julian's mom is trying to kind of bring it back to life, and so she agrees, thinking, oh, well, this will help refurbish the image of my winery. And so Haley heads out there, decides to try to meet Julian again, see what he remembers, only to find out that he does not remember their almost kiss or literally anything about her. Making matters worse, their personalities are absolutely totally different. Haley is a ball of frenetic energy. She wears 3 different styles of necklaces. She, can't commit to a time. She's all over the place. And meanwhile, Julian times out his day. He is on a sabbatical from an Ivy League history professor job, and he's trying to write a book, and so he has a schedule, and he's at 7:25 write for an hour, at 8:25 it's very serious. So he and Haley, Haley is this disruption to his life. He's not really happy about it. He makes that clear, and Haley's like, oh my goodness. But of course her gardening job means that she is always outside of Julian's window in the dirt on all fours, and Julian, a man, becomes incredibly attracted to this image and gets very distracted by Haley, and they start spending time together, and I'm sure you can see where this is going. Now you may be saying, Gretchen, how can you describe the plot of a book that mentions a drunken anonymous love letter and not like mention it in your opening, right? And that is because even though ostensibly the title of the book, the plot of this book, comes from Haley getting drunk and leaving a anonymous, like, admiring letter for Julian that he does find, it is a part of the book, but one of the confusing things about this book is that it's a much smaller part of the plot than you're really gonna imagine that it would ever be, considering, again, it's like the title of the book. That part could have been removed from the book and it wouldn't have changed very much at all about the plot, except for the eventual miscommunication, that's 75% of the way through the book situation. So if that is a really big thing, if you were really interested in that part of the plot, that is not really what you're gonna get in this book. Like, so for example, by the time Haley writes that letter, their relationship has already progressed to a certain point where it is just kind of confusing. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, and it's not really a big part of the book. So that part of my review suggests one of the 3 things in this book that are just confusing. And the first one is the plot. And that the love letter thing not being a major deal is basically, I think, like kind of like a bait and switch with this book almost. It really is, to a certain extent, an opposites attract book. A little bit of Grumpy Sunshine, but again, the characters are a little bit off, so it doesn't quite hit that. I would definitely call it opposites attract. And in terms of that scenario, this book has a lot of things that I was really interested in. So Julian is on sabbatical because one of his co-workers basically had a mental breakdown. And Julian has suffered from anxiety and panic attacks his entire life. And in fact, one of the reasons that he's very distant from his family right now is on a night of incredible tension for his family. He had a panic attack that basically he was like catatonic for several days. And his family thought that he abandoned them, and he felt like he had done so as well, and just caused a lot of tension. So there is a lot of really interesting work being done with that angle. And then on Haley's side, Haley or Hallie? And then on Hallie's side, she is this like ball of energy, but her mom was like a vagabond. She moved Hallie around a lot, and so she is trying to be rooted somewhere. And she had that when her grandmother was alive, and her grandmother is the one that passed the gardening business on to her, but her grandmother has recently died, and so she kind of feels like this tornado is coming up inside her, and she needs to be moving, because otherwise, like, if she stops moving, she has to deal with some stuff in her life, and she feels like that's maybe not making her such a great person. So there was really, really interesting things going on with those 2 characters that just, I don't think, ever bore out. So there's this other side plot about how like the grandma used to go to this wine bar named Corked, and this like super shiny hipster wine bar that called itself Uncorked moved in right next door and is threatening the survival of Corked. And so like Hallie's like committing like slight acts of like sabotage on Uncorked to try to like preserve this part of her grandmother's history, and Julian decides to help out with that. Again, that was also just kind of like tacked on there for points of making character development happen, which was again really bizarre and adds to this whole like the plot being uneven, right? Is it the story of this winery and this family? Is it the story of a relationship? Is it the story of this wine bar and like encroachment from basically modernization and hipsterdom? Normally I would like all of those elements moving around in a book, but unlike, they didn't fit together like a puzzle, right? They just seemed to be in conflict with each other, and that was really frustrating. So my issues with character, it's really, really difficult to not like raise an eyebrow as their relationship progresses, because so with Hallie's character, for example, She is a virgin at 29 when the story takes place. That is not a judgment thing on my part. What I am judging is that the reason that she has not slept with anybody is, and she says this, no one has ever compared to Julian in her mind. And that level of obsession with a person that you never really knew, really almost kissed once and haven't seen in like 10 years, is a little suspect to me. And her level of like getting involved in his life is a little bit suspect as well. And I really had a hard time thinking that that wasn't just a little bit creepy, that she's basically decided like he is it for her and she is going to bend reality in whatever way possible to make that happen. Julian also only really seems to be attracted to her for her body for a good solid portion of the opening. That's not news in a romance novel, and again, it is an opposites attract, so you need the push and pull of their personalities versus, you know, lust, and that's fine. But the character that is set up for Julian, like I said, he's very anxious, he's doesn't have a lot of self-confidence, he times out his day. And when they finally do get to being physical, this is a very, very spicy book. But again, I'm kind of raising my eyebrows because he is a really big, dirty talker. And like, again, you have romance novels where like, you know, the soft-spoken guy turns out to be like really big into dirty talk and all this stuff. But I mean, just the way that he comes on, how strong he comes on that, you're like, this is a totally different person. This does not make sense in the context of his character as we have known him. Also, he's really obsessed with getting her like knees in the dirt and getting her covered in dirt, and that is not a thing I was about. So when you combine this together, like Julian and Hallie, like their characters and the plot, I mean, it just makes the entire tone of the book really, really, really uneven. And there's a lot of things going on that you want to focus on, but they never fit quite well together. And I just couldn't really find a piece of it that I liked, except for the character of Julian's sister, who I guess is who the next book is going to be about. But this book was so wildly written, I don't know if I'm willing to take a chance on that book because I just don't understand what's going on in this book. I really genuinely don't. Like I said at the beginning, if this was my first Tessa Bailey book and I didn't know that she had written other stuff, I would have been like, oh, this is an author who is just starting out, maybe this is even a debut, and this is a person as a writer who is kind of like working out the kinks in a formula that I think really had a lot of promise and had a lot of things in it that I really wanted to like. But Tessa Bailey has written a lot of books, and I know that she has written better books. I don't know if there is something going on here, if this is just a dud. You know, once an author writes enough books, there's always going to be duds. But this just felt so technically confused that I was really lost for most of the book, just being like, what? I know that a lot of people really like Tessa Bailey, and so I'm certainly not going to go out there and say, like, you definitely, for sure, shouldn't read this book. Maybe there's something about it that I totally missed, but I definitely would not recommend this book to people looking to start Tessa Bailey's books. I would 100% give them the Hot and Hammered series and then say, like, those are good, and then, you know, go outside them if you feel adventurous. But this, you know, like I said, it just did not work for me. It didn't work with me with the plot. It didn't work for me with the characters. The tone was all over the place. And I genuinely finished it, not because I was enjoying it, but because I was like, well, this all has to come together in the end, right? And it really didn't feel like it did. All I can say is, these are just my opinions, and this book, when it comes out, if you read it, you may feel that I was wrong, and that's fine. I did not enjoy this reading experience, and even though Julian's sister was probably my favorite character in the whole thing, I don't even know if I want to read the next one, just because there was so much going on with this one. So yeah, I'm gonna go read something else now that is hopefully better. So, I'll see you guys for that one, hopefully. Reviewing is always an adventure. I'll see you guys then. Bye.